Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined by Derek Brown and Pat Fitzmaurice. We are talking fantasy takeaways from the NFC East today. We are doing a series for every division. Today's episode is the NFC East, led by this season the Philadelphia Eagles, 14-3, the 2 seed in the NFC playoffs. Fitz, what was your fantasy takeaway from watching the Eagles this season?
That DeVonta Smith is one of the most underappreciated fantasy performers in the league. Smith did have the lowest yardage total of his 4-year career this year, 833 yards, after going for more than 1,000 yards in both 2022 and 2023. But Smith did miss 4 games this year and still managed to score a career-high 8 touchdowns. He was playing in the run-heaviest offense in the league. The Eagles threw the ball on only 44.3% of their offensive snaps this year. And he was sharing targets with A.J. Brown. And yet, Smith always stands out. He's averaging 1.93 yards per route run and 9.1 yards per target for his career. Both really good numbers. He was at 9.4 yards per target this season. I think he's one of the 5 or 10 best route runners in the league. And I know the run heaviness of the Eagles offense seems like this intractable problem for DeVonta Smith. Like it's going to be that way forevermore. But one of the big reasons the Eagles were able to be so run heavy, well, 2 big reasons. One, Saquon Barkley was so awesome and stayed healthy all year. Number 2, the Eagles defense turned into one of the NFL's best this year. So there were not a lot of shootout game scripts. Everything was very run friendly for Philadelphia this season. Both of those things might repeat next year or they might not. I mean, circumstances are always changing in the NFL. Like the Eagles maybe get a spate of injuries on the defensive side of the ball next year, and all of a sudden they're playing in more shootouts. The pass rate goes up, and A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith are putting up bigger numbers. So I want to bet on the talent of DeVonta Smith in 2025 and sort of, turn the volume down on the circumstances that made the Eagles so run heavy this year and maybe muted the passing volume for them.
What's your take on this, D-Bro, in terms of, because you had talked about in one of our other division previews, takeaways, about a willingness to draft, both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and not be afraid of getting 2 guys in the same offense. You can sort of have the same conversation with Philly, and we kind of mentioned that in that conversation. Maybe a slightly lesser version of the Cincy one, but A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith, same idea.
I mean, same idea and same practicality, man. I mean, DeVonta Smith has shown us who he is, and that's a continual, proven top 20 wide receiver in fantasy. Like, really look over his last 3 seasons, guys. Different coordinators, different situations. DeVonta Smith, wide receiver 15, wide receiver 20, wide receiver 14 in fantasy points per game. We know who DeVonta Smith is. That's a proven wide receiver 2. And if anything ever happens to the passing volume in Philly, look, A.J. Brown and him could both be wide receiver 1s in a fantasy season. And I'm old enough to remember, boys, when DeVonta Smith entered the NFL and everybody said he might be too skinny.
So where are you actually ranking him then, D-Bro, for next year?
I mean, again, he'll be a top 20 to 24 wide receiver. Locked in. Done. Easy.
Sorry, did you say, Fitz, where you were going to rank him next year?
Yeah, I think I've got him like around wide receiver 26 or so. But I think he's going to be lower than that for some people. I think a lot of folks might have him in the 30s.
He'll be a wide receiver 3 in most ranks, I think.
This is mainly a redraft episode, but I'm just curious on the dynasty side, what you guys do with somebody like Smith, who is so locked into being, second fiddle in the passing game, but is so good, and it's a good offense. So in dynasty, how do you approach somebody like Smith, Fitz?
Yeah, he's a target. I mean, he's a guy I would like to have and don't have on enough of my dynasty teams right now.
Yep. Just proven production. Yeah, it's proven production. Like, this is, if you were looking at like a rebuilding, and I don't want to go too far down the well with this, but like if you're rebuilding and you have like a top high-end wide receiver, this is the kind of move you go make. Like, you say, okay, I've got Malik Neighbors. I want a first, maybe another little plus in DeVonta Smith. You can have Neighbors, and I'll enjoy the extra equity because I know I'm going to get a proven wide receiver 2 year in and year out. And he still, I think, has wide receiver 1 upside if the passing rate ever goes up slightly for the Eagles.
And by the way, one of the reasons I didn't have him on more dynasty teams is that I did think he was too skinny coming into the league and didn't get him in rookie drafts because of it.
Ouch.
Big mistake.
Yeah. Let's look at the Commanders. Second place in the division. Obviously, they are in the playoffs as well. This is a 6 seed. Debro, what was your fantasy takeaway for the Commanders?
Zach Ertz is immortal. He's a vampire. I don't know. Like he's got superhuman blood in him. Like tight end 10 in fantasy points per game. How many times he got to do this? Like if he's back in Washington next year, I mean, RIP all my Ben Sinnott takes, but like Zach Ertz probably going to do it again. I mean, the guy was 12th in target share, top 20 in first downs per route run. And that's not even breaking open the can of like separation metrics. This dude was top 3 in both separation and route win rate. Excuse me, I can't talk apparently. Win rate behind only Mark Andrews last year. It's insane. Like if he's back in Washington, we should be ranking him. I'm not going to say he's a top 12 guy for next year, but top 15.
Fitz, how stunned were you on a scale of 1 to 10 that Debro didn't take this opportunity to talk about Jaden Daniels?
That is a little bit of a shocker. I didn't think we were going to get a Zach Ertz take.
Of all, as high on Jaden Daniels as you have been since day one, to not take this.
I felt like people already knew. Okay,
you want to take a victory lap?
I felt like people already knew.
I thought he was going to be skating a victory lap at the Stanley Cup here, but we're not seeing it, surprisingly.
I almost
it's a professional move. I don't have to do it if I set y'all to talk about it instead of me.
I wanted to take a victory. My bold prediction that I kept bringing up on all of our preseason shows was about Terry McLaurin, and that panned out really magnificently as well. So it's just funny to look at and Brian Robinson I had in a lot of places, and he largely was very, very effective for me. So Ertz was like the one guy that like I didn't really pay much attention to. I know he had a good season, obviously, but was kind of behind those other big names. But I mean, yeah, it was a very surprising to me strong season from him. Fitz, what was your takeaway from watching Ertz? And I mean, at his age, I know Debra kind of framed this as Zach Ertz is immortal, but like, are you going to be ranking him aggressively next season?
Well, it's not just at his age, but like at his age and having come back from a major injury. Like that's kind of the thing. And the reason I think people were just, writing him off entirely for fantasy. Yeah, I mean, it was fun to watch the chemistry develop between Jaden Daniels and Zach Ertz. And I feel like Zach Ertz has become, even more so than Terry McLaurin, the guy Jaden Daniels leans on in like, anywhere from 3rd and 4 to like 3rd and 8. He is looking for Zach Ertz to move the chains. And I have a couple of buddies who are in business with Zach Ertz away from football. Shout out to PT and Dan, who I know are both friends of the show. And they've mentioned how like extremely serious Ertz takes his training and his fitness. And, his wife is a former pro soccer player. So like she's probably used to elite athletic training and everything. I don't know. Obviously, Ertz is very serious about extending his career, and I wouldn't be surprised if he squeezed out another productive year or two.
Debra, do you have any just quick thoughts and celebratory ramblings about some of the other players in this offense?
I mean, dude, it was a good year. All I could say is if you bet all the future props on a lot of Commanders, Terry McLaurin over on his receiving touchdowns, over on their win total. It's been a very nice new year so far for you.
Can I ask Debro one thing, and you too, Worm? How are we feeling about Brian Robinson Jr. right now? Because I know we were both very much in on him coming into the season, but there was a slowdown towards the end of the year. And I know like I actually benched him in like my playoff run in one league after he had really helped me out during the regular season. But like, it almost seemed like Chris Rodriguez looked a little better down the stretch.
I will say this. I'm worried about it. For me, it's the how he declined down the stretch. And I think that could have been, I mean, how many times did we see him on the injury report, guys? Like he was on there, off there, on there, off there. And it wasn't just like one thing continually dogging him. It was like, oh, it's a knee, it's a hammy, it's all these different things. I will say, I'll probably be back in on him next year in 2025, only because I don't think that he had a big enough season where he's going to get a lot of respect in drafts. And the other thing, and I know I'm going to throw some bro science out there, but it does hold up. He's in a contract year. Tell me he's not going to do every single thing that he can to get himself in shape, stay on the field, be productive as all get out. Because, I mean, we're talking about he's not like a super, super young running back. So like 2025, he'll be 26 years old. Like this is probably his last NFL contract.
I want to see what they do in terms of building out this backfield. I mean, Eckler, another year older. Like if he goes into next season as just the very clear and obvious workhorse, then I will probably be back in on him. It is worth noting that like, even when he was really, and he was great return on investment from where you got him on draft day.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of that came in the form of a really high floor. If you look even at the start of the season in half PPR scoring, running back 12, 17, 22, 10, 14, 20, 34. That's in the first 8 weeks, and you missed one of those games with the injury. That's like not a lot of high. There was no 20-point games in his entire season in half PPR scoring. His best game of the entire year was 18.8 points at Arizona. Now that's still, you're really happy to have that, especially considering where you drafted him and that fact that he was likely not your RB1, but he didn't have these huge blow up games. And then when the floor goes away later in the year and he has some real duds in there, it starts to get a little stinky and it starts to make me less interested in being aggressive on him next year. But it will largely depend for me on the situation, because we know the situation's good in terms of the offense as long as Jaden Daniels is there. The running lanes will be there. It's going to depend a lot about who his backfield mate is as far as how much I want to invest in him.
Yeah, great.
Super Wild Card Weekend is here. Join Joe Pisapia and Scott Bogman live this Saturday at 4:15 p.m. Eastern on the Betting Pros YouTube channel for expert in-game betting tips, score predictions, and bets you can't miss. Get your edge, subscribe, and turn on notifications now. All right, Fitz, what was your fantasy takeaway for the Dallas Cowboys, who went 7-10 this year?
That unrestricted free agent to be Rico Dowdle should at least be in some team's backfield rotation this coming season, 2025. So Dowdle finished with 1,079 rushing yards, even though the Cowboys didn't really commit to him right away, and he did miss a game at midseason. But Dowdle ran for more than 100 yards in 4 of his last 6 games in the regular season, averaged 4.6 yards per carry, had a rushing success rate, according to Pro Football Reference, of 53.6%. Everything over 50% is pretty darn good. The run blocking for Dallas, like, it's not special anymore. It's not like it was when Ezekiel Elliott was in his heyday. I think the Cowboys ranked like 11th in the run blocking metric adjusted line yards, and PFF graded them 18th in run blocking. So it was adequate. And for Dowdle to put out the kind of numbers he did behind just sort of an adequate offensive line, pretty impressive. I'm not saying anyone's going to be signing him to be a workhorse. Probably not happening, but he would be a really nice complementary piece in a two-headed backfield.
What do you think about ranking Rico Dowdle, Debro, for next season?
It's all going to depend on where he goes and what that looks like. Probably, I mean, as it stands right now, heading into the offseason, an RB3, depending on where he goes. I mean, there are a few teams like the Raiders could use a running back. What happens at the Chargers backfield? I keep going back to the Steelers, but all of their guys are free agents. So we know that Dowdle is not going to command a high, a hefty contract, or probably, anything over maybe 2 years. Maybe it's 3 and the guaranteed falls off after the first or the second year. So, I mean, there's landing spots where Rico Dowdle makes some sense.
Would you rather, if you were forced to pick one or the other in a dynasty format, be buying Rico Dowdle right now or selling him?
Selling. It's definitely selling. I mean, there's too much uncertainty with running backs, especially with their landing spots. And this isn't even talking about, we have an upcoming NFL draft class. And from everything I've heard, I have not dove into it all the way. Pretty decent running back class upcoming too.
Very good.
Yes.
Good at the top and deep running back class.
Yeah, so not good for Rico. If you're Rico, you want to sign immediately. You want to sign fast.
Well, Rico's still going to have a job. They're going to call this running back rookie class the retirement party because they are going to involuntarily retire a lot of veteran running backs.
Love it.
Fitz,
love it.
Can't hold. Would you buy or sell Dowdle in Dynasty?
No, I mean, like, I'm not buying Rico Dowdle is just not like winning Dynasty strategy.
I mean, I don't think it would cost a lot, to be fair. When I posed that question, I'm not saying
but
go
still,
trade 2 first-round picks for him. But
25 third or Rico Dowdle. Give me the third.
Yeah, I think I'd rather have the third. I mean, it's just, it's found money if you had Rico Dowdle on your roster this year, and that's the way you look at it. And you just kind of hold to see where he lands and see if he gets a significant role. But that's the thing, like, it's a role downgrade. If I knew Rico Dowdle was like coming back to the Cowboys and they weren't making any significant additions in the backfield, yes, absolutely, I'll take him over a third-round pick. But that's not going to be the case. He's going to be a complimentary piece.
Mike McCarthy will sign in Chicago, and Rico goes to split the backfield with DeAndre Swift. Let's go.
Boy.
As a Packers fan, you'd love that, Fitzy.
Are you going to promise me Mike McCarthy to the Bears, Debro? I'll take that.
He's interviewing. Can't rule it out, man.
Fitz is like, I'll give up my 2026 first in Dynasty to make Mike McCarthy the head coach of the Bears. All right, last team, the 3-14 New York Giants, who are now possibly out of range of one of these quarterbacks. It kind of depends on, maybe they're in range of a trade up. Maybe, one of Tennessee or Cleveland says we just don't like the crop this year and we want to take Travis Hunter or whoever we think the best player is. So we'll see what happens with New York. But as of right now, looks like they might be on the outside looking in of a rookie quarterback, but within range of a trade. Debro, what was your takeaway from watching this team this year?
Oh, man. That Malik Neighbors was one of the best values in draft season. We talked about him religiously in spite of the bad quarterback play, and it didn't matter. He was wide receiver 6 in fantasy points per game. If he gets a decent quarterback, not even amazing, league average, he has top 3 upside in 2025. Like, amongst 85 qualifying wide receivers, this dude was first in target share, 7th in receiving yards per game. He was top 20 yards per route run. All the numbers, I mean, the efficiency stuff goes up if he gets even league average quarterback play this year. So it's wheels up for Malik Neighbors, man.
I feel like I said a bunch of times in July and August that, because especially early on, like, I was getting Neighbors in the 4th round in a lot of drafts. And I consistently said, assuming health, like, I will guarantee he is going higher than the 4th round is next year. This is the lowest you will ever be able to draft Malik Neighbors. And I think that has panned out, even with the abysmal quarterback situation, to put out the season he did as a rookie in that offensive environment. I mean, he doesn't need even a top 10 quarterback to take another leap. If it's even, again, if you get QB 19, like, this is a step forward. I think you can see from Neighbors. Fitz, when you watch Neighbors, obviously, like, I think you would agree with us that he's, somewhat QB proof for fantasy. Just from the target share alone in that offense. Is there a particular quarterback that you are hoping gets paired there? Are you hoping this is a team that goes after Darnold? Are you hoping this is a team that trades up to get Sanders or Cam Ward? What are you hoping to see his situation look like next year?
I think Darnold would be the greatest hope for him, probably. Man, I don't know who else offers any sort of glimmer of hope whatsoever. Let me ask you guys, for next year, Brian Thomas Jr. or Malik Neighbors?
This is such a cop-out.
This comes down to quarterback.
The answer to me is, if Neighbors gets a good quarterback, Neighbors, and if he doesn't, Thomas.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. If you give Sammy Darnold to the Giants, you get... Okay, let's assume we get top 20 quarterback play out of Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. We're just making assumptions here. I'm taking Neighbors.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Neighbors is quarterback proof enough that he should go around the round 1, round 2 turn, regardless of who his quarterback is. And
what's he going to be for you at wide receiver? He's obviously not going to be ranked ahead of like Chase or Jefferson, those guys, but like not ahead of Puka. He's wide receiver 6.
I think I've got Thomas at 6. Nico Collins at 7, Neighbors at 8 off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think a really good conversation, like getting away from the young guys. And I'm just going to say, look, the old man's going to do it again. I think Mike Evans versus Malik Neighbors is a very good conversation for next year.
I will definitely take Neighbors of that head-to-head, but
Same.
I have certainly been wrong. Everybody who's ever bet against Mike Evans has been wrong, so that could easily not pan out.
Not slowing down at all.
Debra, is there? I mean, I know. Let's say besides Darnold, because he's probably the obvious one. Like, would you prefer Sanders versus Ward to get drafted there? Is there another free? I mean, there's not really. Like, I mean, I guess
you could, a lot of free agents.
You can paint a picture of like if Aaron Rodgers leaves the Jets, but like that wouldn't even be appealing. Like
Kirk,
like who
Kirk
are the
Cousins.
Yeah, Kirk. Yeah.
Oh no, thanks.
Another year of Achilles.
I mean,
I don't know.
I don't think they would sign Justin Fields. I don't see something like that happening.
I mean, if they don't get one of those two quarterbacks, like let's say they don't get a trade up and Ward.
Just like I'm going through teams in my head.
What are they going to do? You can't go to the next season without adding somebody, but who do you even add?
I'm going back and forth. Like, who are you going to add? Like, do you trade? Like, I don't think you trade for, or I don't even think New Orleans is getting rid of Derek Carr, but like even him, or do you sign? Like, okay, here's a possibility, and I'd have to go look at his contract. Is Andy Dalton a free agent? Because I mean, we're scraping the barrel here.
There's nothing worse than being in quarterback purgatory. Or having your favorite team be in quarterback purgatory. It's just.
Don't you think the Giants are so happy they won all those games at the end of the season?
I literally like. I can't
Lock.
even. If it's not Darnold and it's not one of those two guys in the draft, like I don't know. I can't even come up with a name. Like I don't know who it would be.
Is Josh Dobbs going to be a free agent, or is his
I mean, like, you can't go into the season with Dobbs as your starting quarterback.
I do. I mean, well, they went in. I know.
I mean, it's a very, very precarious situation for them. I mean, maybe they reach on QB3 in the draft in this scenario. Maybe they take Milroe, or I don't know, reach on someone. I know you don't like Milroe.
If it's Milroe, then no, I'm bumping him down.
I'm just saying, like, they're. Like they might reach on QB. Like I don't like the smart thing would probably be to just say if they pick third and the two quarterbacks are off the board would be to go in a different direction. But again, like I just don't know who you even could have. Like Daniel Jones might be the best option.
Okay, how about this? Let's live in the world. Let's live in the world where Russell Wilson doesn't go back to Pittsburgh. I'd be in on Neighbors. I think it's fine.
I agree. I don't know if I see that happening, but I would agree with that. If he's there.
Oh no, I don't. I think Pittsburgh's goofy enough to bring Russ back on like a 3-year deal.
Maybe Fields.
That's probably gonna happen.
We talked about Fields to the Jets. Maybe Fields to the Giants. I just don't know. Maybe
I don't know. It's a mess, man.
On that uncertainty, we'll wrap up the NFC East. Please be sure to check out all of our divisional takeaway episodes. We're doing a whole series of them. For Fitz and Debro, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.